Today from the global lane, Israel deploys advanced battlefield technology, bringing success against Hezbollah.
Its response is creativity in the image of their creator. They lead the world in missile defense and microchips. Israel is now launching Iron Beam, which zaps hypersonic missiles at the speed of sound.
As the IDF fights Hezbollah, millions of Christians in sub-Saharan Africa face their own battles.
For the better part of a decade, we've seen these trends continuing to escalate. The humanitarian crisis just continues to mount throughout the area.
Harris, Trump, and Gen X voters, what's in it for them?
We're very utilitarian. We want a little bit of benefit, and we don't drink the Kool-Aid and buy into the long-term narrative.
And it's all right here on the global lane. Exploding Hezbollah pagers and electronic devices was only the opening salvo of Israel's Northern Arrows operation. Now, after decimating rocket positions in South Lebanon and eliminating much of the terror group's leadership, the IDF is promising more amazing advanced warfare tactics coming. So that would come of no surprise to our next guest, George Gilder. He's an American investor, author, economist, and co-founder of the Discovery Institute. His latest book is The Israel Test: How Israel's Genius Enriches and Challenges the World. George, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So how is Israel's genius giving the IDF an advantage in this battle against Hezbollah?
Well, obviously it was Israel's genius that contrived the contraptions that allowed them to attack specifically the Hezbollah operatives all over southern Lebanon, devoted to destroying Israel and killing the Jews there. I mean, Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, said that he welcomed the creation of Israel because it meant all the Jews would be in one place where they could kill them together and make it easier for them to kill the Jews. And so this is the kind of enemy that Israel faces, and its response is creativity in the image of their creator. They lead the world in missile defense and microchips and microchip metrology and biotech and all these different areas, and they make possible the dominance of American companies in the world economy. The NVIDIA chips. NVIDIA is now a $3 trillion valuation on good days. And NVIDIA makes the chips behind all these artificial intelligence breakthroughs that are currently resulting in America's stock market dominating world stock markets. 70% of the market value of companies in the world comes from the United States. And they are companies that are dependent on Israel for their critical path technologies.
George,
NVIDIA could not be the chief chip company without its ownership of the Israeli company Mellanox. And the head of Mellanox is E.L. Waldman, lost 2 children in that October 7th attack.
George, the exploding pagers incident shocked the world and Hezbollah. What other advanced warfare surprises do you think may lie ahead? You're familiar with this Israeli technology, so what technology are they most capable?
Well, today, surprisingly enough, China and Russia both have hypersonic missiles, which render obsolete all the missile defenses we have in the United States. Israel is now launching Iron Beam, which zaps hypersonic missiles at the speed of sound with laser beams at the speed of light. and bring light to the heathen and the missiles in the atmosphere and destroy them. That's an unexpected breakthrough. That iron beam of complementing their iron dome, and that will benefit the United States and the entire world.
George, you know that Israel has received a lot of criticism around the world for its war in Gaza, and now the war against Hezbollah. So amidst all the political rhetoric and hate, what do you want people to know about Israel and its people?
Well, Israel is really the leader of Western civilization today. It's their new movement of primitive, reactionary, malignant forces, and Israel is combating them. Think of Hitler during the Second World War. Nasrallah distributes copies of Mein Kampf. It's a bestseller in many parts of the Middle East, and it's the inspiration for the attacks on Israel. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want a two-state solution. They want to kill Jews, or many of them are concentrated near Hezbollah, where they can be attacked.
Okay, amazing technology. The book is The Israel Test. Israel's genius enriches and challenges the world. George Gilder, it's a pleasure discussing this with you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Did you know that while much of the world's attention focuses on Israel, Hezbollah, and the Middle East, 16 million Christians are displaced, suffering from persecution in sub-Saharan Africa? Many of the displaced are in Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Well, joining us to explain what is happening and to tell us about his organization's Arise Africa initiative and No Road Home report is Ryan Brown. He's CEO of Open Doors USA. Hi, Ryan. So this Open Doors No Road Home report is quite troubling. Half of the displaced people in sub-Saharan Africa are Christian. So what's happening to them and why?
Yeah, this is the result of a multi-year trend in which we just continue to see violence and instability escalate throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And Nigeria really is the epicenter of much of that violence against Christians. And so what we see is mass displacement of Christians in the area. The need far outpaces the support that's been pledged by the UN and other actors to provide aid. And so the humanitarian crisis just continues to mount throughout the area.
Well, let's get into more specifics here on Nigeria. Many people would say, no, this is not religious persecution, but tribal disputes over land that is driving the violence. And you've been there. You've helped victims. What did you and your team discover there?
Yeah, our team, through those on the ground resources, it's true that these things are never in isolation. Persecution of Christians never exists in a vacuum, and there are multiple factors. It is multifaceted, and so that displacement includes Christians and non-Christians. However, Christians are uniquely affected by the realities of what's going on right now. In many cases, Christians are not receiving the same type of protections that perhaps their Muslim fellow countrymen are, and so they become more ready targets of those that are seeking to create instability there within the state. In those areas where we do see folks, the internally displaced camps, Christians can often be overlooked in the distribution of aid and support. And so Christians can suffer even greater than those that are already suffering in the area.
So is Boko Haram still a major factor in the persecution, or is it coming mostly from wealthy landowners using the Fulani herdsmen to drive Christians from their villages?
Yeah, great question. And I would say that that answer is different in different parts of the country. So if you take a look in the Borno state, yes, the Boko Haram is still active, as well as ISWAP and other Islamic militants. When you take a look in other parts of the country, like the Plateau state, you see much more of that Fulani militants driving the persecution.
And nearby, the Democratic Republic of Congo, we've reported on the Allied Democratic Forces, the ADF, which, by the way, is not democratic at all. They're a mixture of Islamic terrorists allied with ISIS and the remnants of Joseph Kony's Lord's Resistance Army from neighboring Sudan and Uganda. So tell us more. What's the latest? What's happening there?
Yeah, we, not long ago, there was the reports of a number of Christians that were brutally killed and attacked in the DRC. And so that instability rather, continues to be prevalent. Again, we are seeing this is a multi-year trend. These aren't necessarily isolated incidents. This has been for the better part of a decade. We've seen these trends continuing to escalate, and our brothers and sisters throughout sub-Saharan Africa. Not long ago, they came together and they asked the global church, they asked international actors to be aware of their situation. They asked their brothers and sisters to lift them up in prayer, to let them know that they're not forgotten in this. They asked international actors to take action. They asked the Nigerian government specifically to not allow these actors to carry forward with impunity, but to bring people to justice.
And where else in sub-Saharan Africa are Christians being persecuted? What other country or countries concern you the most there, Ryan?
Yeah, you mentioned the DRC. That continues to be a place of concern. Somalia, certainly as well. So it's really throughout the region. I do continue to point out that Nigeria, in many ways, really seems to be an epicenter of what's going on, and reflective of a trend that is continuing to grow at an alarming rate throughout the region.
And finally, tell us about how the Open Doors Arise Africa initiative is making a difference.
In October, we'll be launching a petition in which we are asking Christians to sign on to say that they will commit to pray for brothers and sisters, and that they are willing to lock arms in solidarity with our brothers and sisters that are suffering greatly throughout sub-Saharan Africa. Our goal is to see 1 million people across the globe sign this petition in solidarity. This communicates to the world with a great voice. It lets these government actors like the Nigerian government and others know that the world is watching. And I would say, even most importantly, it communicates to our brothers and sisters in Africa that they're not forgotten, that we stand with them, and that we're lifting them up in prayer.
And that's so important. Prayer is the key, isn't it? Ryan Brown.
It is. It's the first response.
CEO of Open Doors U.S. Although the subject matter is difficult, we always appreciate you sharing your time and insights with us. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you.
Did you know that the average member of Generation Z spends as much as 6 hours a day on social media? Imagine being bombarded with campaign ads, political rhetoric, and online disinformation. How do they wade through it all to determine the truth about the policies and issues affecting them? It's a challenge that demands our attention. Well, here are some thoughts as Young Voices commentator Ethan Watson. Ethan, one poll shows Kamala Harris winning 59% of the vote of young Americans between the ages of 18 and 35. And after reading your recent Real Clear Politics article, I'm sure you'd say they're choosing style over substance. So now, as early voting starts, how likely is it that some of them will examine issues and policies more closely?
Well, I really hope they will, because my generation, I've always felt like, has been a little bit more cynical than generations that have come before us. Unfortunately, I think that was a side effect of COVID-19. We got very utilitarian, very cynical. In my experience as a student and at the university, I've run lots of events. I see how students work at clubs and organizations, and they don't show up because they believe in the guest speaker talking about LinkedIn networking tips. They're there for the free food or the T-shirt. We're very utilitarian. We want a little bit of benefit fit and we don't drink the Kool-Aid and buy into the long-term narrative. And so I was at first really mystified as to why my generation was not applying this sort of sniffer to Kamala Harris. But I think it's because, for all of our sort of politically conscious lives, my generation has been bombarded with either on the left, you have political correctness, which is stifling, one wrong move and they'll try to ruin your life. And then on the other hand, you have Donald Trump with, his bold and sort of hyperbolic rhetoric, which is hilarious, but understandably off-putting to some. And I think Kamala has unfortunately provided us with a milquetoast, inoffensive, and palatable way to talk about politics, which is really unfortunate because I don't think Kamala represents what's best for my generation or even really what my generation wants, which is a change from the status quo.
Well, let's get into that. What are the top issues then on the minds of Gen Z voters?
So right off the bat, when I talk to people my age about politics, which I do a lot, I'm a pretty political guy, everyone always says, they always grumble that no matter who's in office, nothing really changes. They want to change from the status quo. And I would feel that Kamala is the archetypical status quo candidate, right? She was literally swapped out at the top of the ticket. No one voted for her. And she's ripping her policies straight off the Joe Biden campaign website. So I would really encourage people my age to examine the bull in the china shop that is Donald Trump. People my age just generally feel like the economy is not moving in the right direction. And so, again, Kamala is doubling down on the Joe Biden administration policies on the economy. And then also, per the polling that I cite in my article, my generation, like 53% would cite a issue at the southern border. I don't know where the other 47% of people have been, like are they living under a rock somewhere? But, she was the one in charge of, securing the southern border. And I'm not sure why we think she is the right person to enact the change that we're looking for. But I think we've just been taken for a ride by her milquetoast rhetoric.
Well, you touched on this a little bit. So how do you think government giveaways proposed by Democrats, forgiveness of student loan debt, a $25,000 first-time home buyer handout, expansion of child-dependent care credits, medical care, how will that affect their choices at the ballot box?
I would certainly hope that, it kind of plays into, that's what they're obviously trying to do, is they're trying to sort of buy off people my age. And honestly, I just think people my age who agree with me need to have one-on-one conversations with our peers and say, look, like in the long term, is this going to help you? Maybe this feels like a benefit right now, but, in the next 5 years or so, people my age want to start having a family. We think about buying a house. And pointing out how those policies make those activities very difficult and very expensive, I think is a really surefire way to victory. I think the utilitarian argument is what's going to win over my generation because, what do people my age mostly notice, right? We notice prices. We notice the price of a late night slice of pizza has gone up from $2 to $3, right? And so pointing out that that's because of inflationary spending and connecting those dots for people that maybe aren't business or economics majors by trade is a really important way to do it. But I think it just has to be these one-on-one conversations between people like me who, believe in some change and don't believe in Kamala Harris, talking to people our age who have been sort of taken a ride by her milquetoast rhetoric.
Well, early voting has started in some states. So how likely are most Gen Zers to vote? Will they vote early? Will they wait to vote in person or by mail? How are they gonna vote anyway?
I haven't talked to a lot of my friends about how they're going to vote, particular the method. I think a lot of people my age probably will vote early or by mail, which is why it's so critical that we have these conversations now. Now is the time if you're in my shoes, if you're a young conservative or a young libertarian, don't be cowed by being afraid of being canceled or shut down. Now is our time to kind of speak out and have these one-on-one connections. And again, it has to be a one-on-one conversation because, they're not going to listen to you if you just send them a link or read them an article. You have to talk to them face to face and say, look, I'm not trying to make you into a conservative or a Trump voter tomorrow. All I want to do is connect with you on a one-on-one level and ask you to hear me out and think about it. And that's really the only way you can do it. And I wish we were making philosophical or moral arguments here, but I'm just not sure my generation is there yet. So we have to go the utilitarian route.
Okay, thinking it through, Young Voices commentator Ethan Watson. Thank you, Ethan, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Population crisis. The United States birth rate stands at 1.6. It needs to be 2.1 children per couple for the population to replace itself. Leslie Root, an assistant professor and demographer at the University of Colorado, argues the lower rate may be a result of delayed childbearing. Most couples today delay starting a family until they're in their late 20s or 30s, once their career paths are well established. But I contend part of the problem is the result of a population that has aborted 65 million babies since 1973, the year Roe v. Wade was approved by the U.S. Supreme Court. If they'd been allowed to live, imagine what that would have meant for the country and the economy. Another 65 million more people would be contributing to the country, working harder to build a better society. And not only them, but also the children they would produce. One reason given for keeping the U.S. southern border open is the country needs more laborers. Here's the solution. Close the border, discourage abortion, and encourage people to have more babies through tax credits and other incentives. Vice President Kamala Harris believes the government needs to keep far away from interfering with women's choices.
One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government should not be telling her what to do.
Vice President Harris announced this week that she would support ending the Senate filibuster so a simple majority could vote to enact a federal law guaranteeing a woman's right to an abortion. But wait a minute. I thought Harris opposed the federal government interfering with women's rights. A federal law would overturn the rights of people in the states to make their own decisions about laws restricting abortion. Many women oppose abortion and support laws protecting the lives of babies. What about their rights, the rights of the majority in their states? So what role should the federal government play? Folks, it has a responsibility to protect human lives, whether from gun-wielding assailants on the streets of San Francisco or abortionist knives. With all due respect, Madam Vice President, when do you consider someone to be officially dead? Most people would say a person is dead when their heart stops beating. So shouldn't the same criteria be applied to life? If you're dead when your heart stops beating, then aren't you alive when your heart starts beating? It begins at about 6 weeks in the womb. Our Declaration of Independence from Great Britain states that we're endowed by our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is for all humans, whether a person lives on the street or in a womb. In Psalm 36:9, we're told God is the giver of life, and His light lets us enjoy life. So let's celebrate life and light. That's the best way forward to a more populous and prosperous nation. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.